Ambassador Minho Kim felt the weight of 12 alien gazes upon him as he stepped into the vast crystalline chamber that housed the Galactic Council. The structure itself was a marvel of alien engineering, its translucent walls pulsing with bioluminescent veins that carried information faster than any human computer. Each of the 12 council seats was designed for a different species, from the towering gas-based ethereals who floated in containment fields to the rock-skinned lithoids whose chairs were carved from living stone. The chamber's atmosphere was carefully regulated to accommodate all 12 species, creating a strange mixture of gases that made Minho's breathing apparatus work overtime. He could taste metal and ozone on his tongue, mixed with something that reminded him of burning flowers. This was only the third time in human history that Earth had been granted an audience before the full council, and Minho knew that billions of lives hung on the words spoken in this room. Council leader Vortesh dominated the center of the chamber, his insectoid form standing nearly 3 meters tall. His exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian, and his forearms moved with mechanical precision as he gestured to holographic displays showing human expansion across the galaxy. The creature's compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights like fractured mirrors, making it impossible for Minho to read any emotion in that alien face. Ambassador Kim, Vortesh's voice came through the universal translator as a series of clicks and whistles, but the machine converted it to perfect Korean. With an unsettling mechanical tone, your species has been observed for the equivalent of 50 Earth years. In that time, humanity has established colonies on 47 worlds, developed faster-than-light travel, and created weapons that concern this council. The holographics display shifted to show human ships moving between star systems, their sleek design so different from the organic curves of council vessels. Minho watched footage of human construction robots building cities on distant worlds, families stepping out of transport ships onto new planets, children playing in alien sunshine. To him, it looked like hope and progress. To the council, it apparently looked like a threat. "Counselor," Minho began, his diplomatic training keeping his voice calm despite the fear growing in his chest. "Humanity has followed all established protocols for colonial expansion. Our settlements are research stations and agricultural colonies. We're trying to find solutions to Earth's overpopulation, not build an empire." A sound like grinding stone came from the lithoid representative, Cragmore, whose species had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years. "Your weapons development suggests otherwise, human. Your vessels carry armaments that could level entire cities." "Defensive measures only," Minho replied quickly. "The galaxy can be dangerous. We've encountered hostile wildlife, space pirates, natural disasters. Our weapons are tools for survival, not conquest." The ethereal delegate, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering force field, spoke in harmonics that made the chamber vibrate. "Survival weapons that happen to be more advanced than anything your species should possess after such a short time in space. How do you explain this rapid technological advancement?" Minho felt sweat beading on his forehead, despite the chamber's cool temperature. This was the question he'd been dreading. Humanity's technological leaps had been remarkable, even by their own standards. The development of quantum drives, plasma weaponry, and adaptive AI had all happened within a single generation. Earth scientists called it the innovation cascade, but they couldn't fully explain it either. "Human ingenuity has always thrived under pressure," he said carefully. "When faced with the challenges of space exploration, our scientists found new solutions." Vortesh's mandibles clicked in what Minho had learned was the insectoid equivalent of laughter. "Solutions that threaten the established order of this galaxy. Humanity has existed in space for less than a century, yet your ships now match the speed of vessels from civilizations that have traveled the stars for millennia. Your weapons technology advances at a rate that suggests military focus, not peaceful exploration." The chamber's lighting shifted, and new holographic displays appeared showing human military exercises, testing of new weapons systems, and the construction of what appeared to be battle-ready spacecraft. Minho recognized some of the footage, but other scenes were clearly taken by Council surveillance that humanity had never detected. "The Council has debated your species' future," for 3 cycles, Vortesh continued, his 4 arms spreading wide. In a gesture that encompassed all 12 representatives, some believe humanity can be guided toward peaceful coexistence. Others see you as a cancer that will consume everything in its path if allowed to spread unchecked. A chill ran down Minho's spine as he realized this wasn't a diplomatic meeting. This was a trial, and humanity was the defendant. After careful consideration, Vortesh announced, his translated voice echoing through the crystalline chamber, this council has reached a unanimous decision. Humanity has 30 standard cycles to withdraw all colonies, research stations, and military assets beyond your Sol system's heliopause. You will remain within your birth system under council observation until such time as your species demonstrates it can exist without threatening galactic stability. The words hit Minho like a physical blow. 30 standard cycles was roughly equivalent to 40 Earth days. The logistics alone made compliance impossible, even if Earth wanted to abandon everything they'd built among the stars. "Counselor," Minho said, his diplomatic mask finally slipping to reveal desperation, "what you're asking is impossible. We have families on those worlds, entire communities that have called those places home for decades. Our research stations are working on cures for diseases, solutions to energy crises, methods to terraform hostile worlds for future generations. This isn't just expansion, it's survival." "Your survival is not this council's concern," came the cold reply. "Your compliance is." Vortesh gestured, and the holographic displays changed to show the combined military might of the 12 council species. Massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed human vessels, swarms of fighter craft that moved like living things, weapons platforms that could crack planets. The message was clear. 30 cycles, Ambassador Kim. Withdraw voluntarily, or be withdrawn by force. This is not negotiation, this is mercy. Back on Earth, President Jiwoo Park sat in the emergency session room deep beneath Seoul, watching the encrypted transmission from the council chambers. Around the table sat the leaders of Earth's unified government, their faces grim as they absorbed the ultimatum that had just been delivered to their species. General Sungmin Lee leaned forward, studying the holographic display that showed human colonies scattered across local space. 47 worlds, home to over 200 million people. Research stations working on breakthroughs that could save Earth from environmental collapse. Manufacturing facilities producing resources that Earth desperately needed. Mining operations on asteroids that supplied the rare elements necessary for their growing technology. "They're not offering diplomacy," General Lee said quietly, his weathered face reflecting the blue glow of the tactical display. "They're demanding surrender, complete and total surrender." President Park nodded slowly, her mind racing through the implications. "Can we do it? Evacuate everyone in 40 days? "Impossible," replied Transport Minister Jae Hyun-ko. "We'd need every ship in the human fleet working non-stop, and even then we couldn't move everyone. The logistics alone would take months to organize properly." "And the research?" asked Science Advisor Hyejin Seo. "We're on the verge of breakthrough treatments for genetic diseases, clean fusion technology, terraforming processes that could save dozens of worlds. If we abandon everything now—" "If we don't abandon it, they'll destroy it all anyway," General Lee interrupted. "Along with everyone on those worlds." The room fell silent as the weight of the situation settled over them. In 40 days, humanity would either become prisoners in their own solar system or face the combined military might of 12 alien civilizations that had been conquering worlds since before humans discovered fire. President Park looked around, the table at the faces of Earth's leadership, seeing her own determination reflected in their eyes. "Then we need to prepare for war." The countdown clock in Earth's command center showed 2 days remaining when the first reports came in from Haven's Rest. Communications had gone dark suddenly, completely, as if the entire colony had simply ceased to exist. Admiral Hyun Sik, Choi was reviewing evacuation schedules when his aide rushed into the command room, face pale with shock. "Sir, we're getting emergency signals from the Haven's Rest system," Lieutenant Dong Ho Park stammered. "Multiple distress beacons, then nothing. Complete communications blackout." Choi felt his blood turn cold. Haven's Rest wasn't just any colony. It was home to his daughter, Soo Jin, her husband, and their 2 young children. The mining station had been his daughter's first assignment as a geological engineer, and she'd fallen in love with both the work and a fellow colonist named Jin Wu. They'd built a life there among the asteroid fields, extracting rare minerals while raising their family under alien stars. "Get me a long-range probe to that system immediately," Choi ordered, his admiral's training keeping his voice steady, despite the terror growing in his chest. "I want visual confirmation within the hour." The probe's journey took 43 minutes, racing through hyperspace toward the coordinates where Haven's Rest should have been. When the images finally came back, the command center fell into absolute silence. Where once a thriving mining colony had orbited a resource-rich asteroid, there was nothing but expanding clouds of superheated gas and metallic debris. The visual reconstruction showed what had happened. 3 Council dreadnoughts had emerged from hyperspace simultaneously, their massive forms dwarfing the civilian mining platform. Haven's Rest had been defenseless, its only protection a handful of mining ships and construction robots. The colony's emergency transmission lasted exactly 12 seconds before the plasma bombardment began. 50,000 people had called Haven's Rest home. Miners, engineers, scientists, families who had traveled across the galaxy to build something new. Children who had been born among the stars, knowing no other home than the rotating habitats that provided Earth-normal gravity and atmosphere. All of them vaporized in a coordinated orbital strike that left no survivors, no escape pods, no hope. The Council's message arrived on every human communication channel simultaneously, broadcast from the same ships that had just committed genocide. Vortesh's insectoid face filled screens across human space, his compound eyes reflecting no emotion as he delivered his ultimatum. This is the price of defiance. The colony of Haven's Rest has been eliminated as a demonstration of Council resolve. You have 48 hours to begin immediate evacuation of all human presence beyond the Sol barrier. Submit now, or every human world will share this fate. The transmission included tactical data from the attack, showing how effortlessly the Council ships had penetrated human space, how completely they had overwhelmed civilian defenses. It was a message designed to break human morale, to show the futility of resistance against such overwhelming power. Admiral Choi watched the footage of his daughter's home being destroyed over and over, each viewing revealing new horrors. The playground where his grandchildren had played, now a cloud of atoms. The research lab where Sujin had discovered new mineral extraction techniques erased from existence. The small apartment where family photos had lined the walls, all of it gone as if it had never existed. 3 days later, Choi stood in the ruins of what had once been Haven's Rest. His flagship, the battle cruiser Indomitable, had arrived with a full investigation team and recovery crews. They found almost nothing. The Council's plasma bombardment had been thorough, designed to leave no trace of human presence. Even the asteroids that had housed the mining operation were cracked and melted, their surfaces turned to glass by the intense heat. Captain So-Young Nam led the forensics team through the debris field, her powered armor's sensors scanning for any trace of survivors or salvageable remains. The silence was absolute, broken only by the hiss of radiation and the distant ping of sensor equipment. This wasn't just destruction, it was erasure, as if the Council wanted to remove any evidence that humans had ever existed in this system. "Admiral," came Nam's voice through the comm system, careful and professional despite the horror surrounding them. "We found personal effects scattered throughout the debris field. The plasma strike was designed to maximize suffering while ensuring no survivors." Choi's gloved hand closed around a small piece of metal that his suit's scanner had identified as precious to him. Sujin's wedding ring, somehow surviving the annihilation that had claimed everything else. The metal was still warm from the energy that had destroyed his family, a final cruel reminder of what the Council had taken from him. The investigation team worked in respectful silence around their admiral, documenting the complete annihilation of civilian targets. Combat engineers analyzed the weapon signatures, tactical officers studied the attack patterns, medical teams searched for any trace of the thousands of families who had died here. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. This had been a deliberate act of terrorism designed to break human resistance through fear. "Sir," Captain Nam approached carefully, her voice soft through the helmet comm. "Earth Command is requesting your orders. The other colonies are asking for guidance. Some are beginning evacuation procedures. Others are requesting military protection." Joy looked up from the melted remains of his daughter's wedding ring, his eyes focusing on the alien stars that surrounded this graveyard. For 30 years, he had served in Earth's Space Force, rising through the ranks during humanity's expansion into the galaxy. He had always believed in diplomacy, in finding peaceful solutions to conflicts, in the possibility of coexistence with other species. That belief died with his family in the fires of Haven's Rest. "Signal all fleets." Choi's voice was ice, cutting through the comm channel with deadly precision. "Operation Ghost Protocol is now active. All civilian evacuations are suspended. All military assets are to assume combat readiness immediately." Nam's helmet turned toward him, surprise evident even through the armor's face mask. Ghost Protocol was theoretical, a black operations plan that few in Earth's command structure even knew existed. It represented humanity's darkest contingency, the plan they had hoped never to use. "Sir, Ghost Protocol has never been tested in actual combat. The risks..." Choi's voice cracked with controlled fury. "Captain, they just murdered 50,000 civilians to make a point. They vaporized children in their beds to demonstrate their power. They wanted to see what humans become when you corner us, when you threaten everything we've built, when you murder our families." He gestured toward the expanding debris field that had once been a thriving human community, his daughter's wedding ring still clutched in his armored fist. "The Council wanted to see what monsters look like when you create them. Signal Earth Command. Signal every human ship in space. Signal every colony and outpost and research station. Tell them the age of diplomacy is over. Tell them Admiral Choi sends his regards to the Galactic Council." Choi's eyes reflected the distant stars as he made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Let's show them what humans become when they murder our children." The Mortaki border station, designated Alpha 77, had been operational for over 300 years. Its crew of 50 insectoid warriors monitored shipping lanes, tracked vessel movements, and maintained communication relays across a dozen star systems. The station's quantum sensors could detect approaching ships from light years away. Its defensive systems could vaporize asteroids, and its crew had never failed in their duty to the Galactic Council. At 0347 station time, Alpha 77 simply ceased to exist. No warning alarms, no distress signals, no final transmissions begging for help. The massive orbital platform, along with its crew, weapons, and decades of intelligence data, vanished as if it had never been built. The only trace left behind was a faint energy signature that Council scientists couldn't identify, lingering in space like the ghost of something that had been there moments before. Council Command initially dismissed it as a sensor malfunction. Space was dangerous, and military stations occasionally suffered catastrophic failures. Equipment broke down, reactors overloaded, accidents happened. But when the second outpost disappeared 12 hours later, followed by a third 6 hours after that, panic began to spread through the Council's military hierarchy. The attacks followed no pattern that Council strategists could understand. Remote. Listening posts vanished without a trace. Supply depots containing years of stored resources simply disappeared. Communication relays that had operated for centuries went dark in seconds. Whatever was hunting Council assets moved like nothing. Their sensors had ever detected, striking without warning and leaving no evidence behind. On the homeworld of Mortak Prime, Councillor Gricketh stood in his species' primary command center, watching in growing horror as red warning lights spread across the tactical display. Each light represented a facility, outpost or monitoring station that had gone dark. The pattern was spreading like a disease through Council space, consuming their infrastructure with surgical precision. "How many?" Gricketh's mandibles clicked nervously as he addressed his tactical officer. 17 confirmed losses in the past 48 hours, Councillor. All military or intelligence installations. No civilian targets have been touched. The precision was what frightened Gricketh most. Whatever was attacking them knew exactly which facilities were military assets and which were civilian. They had intelligence on Council operations that should have been impossible for an outside force to obtain. It suggested planning, preparation, and resources that the Council had never credited to humanity. Have we identified the attackers? Negative, sir. We have no visual confirmation, no weapon signatures, no debris from enemy vessels. Our facilities are simply gone. As if summoned by his words, another warning light appeared on the display. The Kepler station, home to 200 Council technicians and their families, had stopped transmitting. Grixth watched in real time as another piece of Council infrastructure vanished into the void. The emergency session convened as more reports flooded in from across Council space. The 12 species representatives gathered in their crystalline chamber, but instead of the confident authority they usually projected, fear hung in the air like smoke. Each representative brought news of losses, mysterious disappearances, and attacks that defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. The Zephyrian delegate, Morval, whose species had dominated space combat for over 5,000 years, spoke first. Our deep space monitoring array in the Vega system has gone dark. The facility housed 300 personnel and our most advanced sensor equipment. There should have been weeks of warning before any hostile force could approach. Our supply depot at Rigel 7 has vanished, added the Crystalline Collective's speaker, their voice harmonizing through multiple frequencies. 60 million tons of processed materials, enough to supply a fleet for a standard year. The depot's automated defenses should have been able to repel any known human vessel. Vortesh's compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights as he processed the reports. The pattern was becoming clear, and it terrified him. These weren't random raids or desperate attacks by a cornered enemy. This was systematic dismantling of Council infrastructure by an intelligence that understood their operations better than they understood it themselves. The humans are using technology we've never encountered, he admitted, his translated voice carrying undertones of fear. Their vessels appear and disappear without activating any known drive systems. They strike with precision that suggests complete knowledge of our defensive capabilities. In the darkest reaches of space, Lieutenant Colonel Young J. Park's stealth ship materialized next to the Zephyrian command center, like a predator emerging from shadows. The human vessel was sleek and angular, its hull covered in metamaterial that bent light and sensor beams around it. To Council sensors, it might as well have been invisible. Ghost leader to all teams, Park's voice carried through encrypted. Quantum channels to 11 other ships positioned throughout the galaxy. Operation Nightfall is go. Remember, we're not here to destroy, we're here to learn. Park's team had been training for this mission since Ghost Protocol was first conceived 5 years ago. They were humanity's best and brightest, soldiers and scientists working together to develop tactics that no alien species would expect. While the Council had spent millennia perfecting conventional warfare, humans had spent decades thinking outside every box they could find. The Zephyrian Command Center never saw them coming. Human boarding pods, launched from impossible angles, using gravity manipulation technology, attached to the station's hull like metallic parasites. Cutting beams that operated on quantum frequencies sliced through alien armor as if it were paper, creating entry points for the assault teams. Inside the station, Zephyrian guards in their battle armor found themselves facing enemies who moved like ghosts. Human soldiers in adaptive camouflage suits seemed to appear from empty corridors, their weapons firing energy bolts that disrupted alien nervous systems without causing permanent damage. The Council forces found themselves unconscious before they could even sound an alarm. Resistance neutralized, Park reported, as his team moved through the command center's corridors. Beginning data extraction now. The Zephyrian database represented 5,000 years of accumulated military knowledge. Star charts showing every Council installation, tactical assessments of enemy capabilities, detailed specifications for weapons and defenses, communication codes that could grant access to the entire Council network. Park's team copied everything. Their quantum storage devices, absorbing information faster than the alien computers could process it. Package secured, Park announced as his data specialist gave him the thumbs up. Their entire strategic database is ours, beginning withdrawal. The human ships vanished as suddenly as they had appeared, leaving behind unconscious guards and empty computer cores. By the time the Zephyrians woke up, the raiders were already light years away, and the station's most classified information was being analyzed by human intelligence officers. Similar scenes played out across Council space, as Ghost Protocol teams struck with coordinated precision. The Ethereal Energy Research Facility in the Centauri system lost decades of experimental data. The Lithoid weapons testing ground found its prototype technologies copied and its personnel stunned but unharmed. The insectoid Mortaki communication hub woke up to discover that humans now had access to their entire military communication network. Back in the Council chamber, the reports continued to pour in. 12 civilizations that had never known defeat were being systematically stripped of their advantages by an enemy that fought like nothing they had ever encountered. "They're not trying to conquer us," realized Vortesh, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. "They're learning everything about us, our weaknesses, our capabilities, our deepest secrets." The ethereal delegate's energy field flickered with distress. "If they have access to our databases, they know the location of every facility, every ship, every strategic asset in Council space. More than that," added the crystalline speaker, their harmonic voice carrying notes of terror. "They know how we think, how we fight, how we make decisions. They've turned our own knowledge against us." In space, Admiral Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching tactical displays that showed the fruits of Operation Ghost Protocol. Human intelligence had mapped every aspect of Council military power, identified every weakness, catalogued every defensive system. What had taken the Council millennia to build, humanity had learned to defeat in a matter of days. "Admiral, Captain," Nam approached with a data pad containing the latest reports. "All Ghost teams have reported successful completion of their primary objectives. We now have complete intelligence on Council military capabilities, force dispositions and strategic planning." Choi nodded, his eyes still reflecting the cold fury that had driven him since Haven's Rest. "And the Council's response? Panic?" "Sir, their emergency sessions are being monitored through the communication networks we've compromised. They're finally beginning to understand what they're facing." "Good." Choi's voice carried the weight of 50,000 dead civilians, the echo of children who would never grow up, the memory of a daughter's wedding ring melting in stellar fire. They wanted to demonstrate their power by murdering innocents. Now let them discover what humanity learned in the shadows, while they thought they were the apex predators of this galaxy. The tactical display showed Council forces scrambling to respond to threats they couldn't see, couldn't predict, and couldn't counter. For the first time in their long history of dominance, the 12 species found themselves outmatched by an enemy that had turned invisibility into an art form. "Phase 2 begins at dawn," Admiral Choi announced. "It's time to show the Council what happens when you underestimate the species you just made your enemy." The Nexus had been chosen as the assembly point for the largest military fleet in galactic history. Located at the gravitational balance point between 3 star systems, the region of space offered perfect staging ground for what Council leader Vortesh had dubbed the final solution to the human problem. 8,000 warships from 12 different civilizations converged in perfect formation, their combined firepower capable of sterilizing entire worlds. The Mortaki contributed their insectoid hive ships, each one a living organism bred for, wore their biohulls pulsing with organic weapons that could spit acid through space. The Zephyrian fleet brought their crystalline vessels, ships grown rather than built, their faceted surfaces focusing energy into beams that could slice through planetary cores. The Lithoid armada consisted of mobile asteroids, hollowed out and weaponized, each one capable of ramming through space stations like cosmic bullets. Admiral Vortesh stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable, a massive dreadnought that had never known defeat in 3 centuries of service. Around him, holographic displays showed the positioning of every ship in the fleet, a perfect demonstration of Council military doctrine that had conquered hundreds of worlds. "All forces report ready for final approach to the Sol system," announced his tactical officer, a younger insectoid whose mandibles clicked with excitement. "Human defensive positions appear minimal. Intelligence suggests they have fewer than 200 ships in total." Vortesh's compound eyes reflected the tactical display with satisfaction. The humans had revealed their desperation through their recent raids, but stealth attacks against isolated outposts were very different from facing the combined might of 12 civilizations in open battle. Soon, Earth would burn, and the galaxy would remember why the Council had ruled unopposed for so long. Begin the advance, Vortesh commanded. Today we end the human threat forever. The great fleet moved toward Earth like a tide of destruction, their formation maintaining perfect discipline across thousands of kilometers of space. Each species maintained their traditional battle groups, but they moved in coordination that spoke of centuries of military cooperation. This wasn't just an attack force, it was a demonstration of everything that made the Council the dominant power in the galaxy. As they approached the outer edge of the Sol system, Council sensors began detecting the human defensive fleet. 200 ships, just as intelligence had predicted, arranged in what appeared to be a desperate last stand near Earth's orbital shipyards. The human vessels looked small and primitive compared to the massive Council dreadnoughts, their angular designs lacking the organic elegance of ships that had evolved over millennia. Pathetic, clicked Vortesh's tactical officer. Their entire fleet could fit inside one of our hive ships. This will be over in minutes. But Admiral Choi, watching from the bridge of his flagship hidden in quantum shadow just beyond sensor range, smiled coldly as he observed the Council fleet's approach. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The human ships the Council could see were decoys, automated drones broadcasting false life signs and energy signatures. The real human fleet remained invisible, positioned throughout the system in places no conventional sensor could detect. All ghost ships, this is Admiral Choi, his voice carried through quantum encrypted channels to 300 human vessels hidden throughout the system. The Council has taken our bait. Remember, they murdered 50,000 civilians at Haven's Rest. Today we show them the price of that decision. The human ships that emerged from quantum shadow didn't follow any known laws of physics. They materialized from impossible angles, their hulls crackling with energy that bent space around them. These weren't the primitive vessels the Council expected to face. These were the products of Project Blackwater, humanity's most classified research program, incorporating technologies that pushed the boundaries of what the universe allowed. Captain Yunji Lee stood on the bridge of the experimental warship Vengeance, feeling the ship's quantum drive humming through the deck plates beneath her feet. The vessel's hull was composed of metamaterials that could shift between states of matter, making it simultaneously solid enough to withstand weapons fire and permeable enough to phase through enemy attacks. Its weapon systems channeled zero-point energy into coherent beams that could rewrite the atomic structure of whatever they touched. "Target the Council flagship," Lee ordered her weapons officer. "Let's introduce Vortesh to human engineering." Vengeance's main gun fired, and reality seemed to twist around the beam. The energy bolt struck the inevitable shields and didn't bounce off or dissipate. Instead, it passed through the defensive barriers as if they didn't exist, striking the dreadnought's hull and converting entire sections of armor into exotic matter that simply ceased to be solid. Vortesh staggered as his flagship shuddered, under the impact of weapons that shouldn't have been possible. His tactical displays showed impossible readings as human ships appeared from nowhere, their weapons firing beams of concentrated impossibility that turned Council advantages into weaknesses. "How are they doing this?" he clicked frantically to his science officer. "Their weapons are ignoring our shields." "Unknown, sir. Their energy signatures don't match any known technology. It's as if they're rewriting physics itself." Around the Council fleet, human ships materialized like predators emerging from camouflage. The ghost ships moved in perfect coordination, their quantum drives allowing them to appear behind, below, and inside enemy formations without warning. Council vessels that had dominated space for millennia found themselves outmaneuvered by ships that treated three-dimensional space as merely a suggestion. A Mortaki hive ship, its biohull writhing with organic weapons, found itself facing 3 human destroyers that phased in and out of reality like deadly spirits. The alien vessel's acid spitters fired their deadly payload, but the human ships simply shifted their molecular structure, letting the attacks pass harmlessly through their hulls before rematerializing to return fire with weapons that turned the hive ship's living armor into crystal, then dust. The Zephyrian crystal ships attempted to form their traditional focusing formation, their faceted hulls aligning to create devastating energy beams. But human ships equipped with gravity manipulation drives struck from angles that existed outside normal space, their attacks coming from directions the crystal ships couldn't defend against. When Zephyrian energy beams met human quantum shields, the interaction created cascading failures that turned the attacking ship's own weapons against them. "Admiral," Lee's tactical officer called out as another Council dreadnought exploded in brilliant silence. "Enemy forces are attempting to retreat, but their jump drives aren't responding. Something is jamming their escape routes." "Quantum interference." "Fields," Lee replied with grim satisfaction. "We learned from their own databases how their drive systems work. Now we're using that knowledge to trap them here." Throughout the battle, Admiral Choi's voice carried across all communication frequencies, human and alien alike, his words cutting through the chaos of combat with deadly precision. "You killed innocents and called it mercy. You murdered children in their sleep and called it peacekeeping. You wanted to demonstrate your power by destroying those who couldn't fight back. Learn what justice looks like when it comes from a species you underestimated." The battle raged for 6 hours, but it was never truly a contest. The Council fleet, for all its size and power, was fighting an enemy that had rewritten the rules of warfare. Human ships struck from quantum shadows, their weapons turning enemy strengths into vulnerabilities, their defenses making them nearly impossible to target effectively. One by one, the great warships of 12 civilizations fell to weapons that treated their armor as merely suggestions and their shields as interesting light shows. Council commanders who had never known defeat found themselves surrendering to vessels that shouldn't have been able to exist, piloted by humans who fought with the cold fury of those who had lost everything they loved. When the firing finally stopped, the space around Earth was filled with the wreckage of the Council's grand fleet. 8,000 ships had entered the Sol system with the confidence of conquerors. Less than 100 limped away as prisoners of war, their crews stunned and disarmed by humans who had shown them mercy they didn't deserve. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the last Council dreadnought lower its shields in surrender. Her tactical display showed the impossible, complete victory against overwhelming odds achieved with 0 human casualties. "All enemy vessels neutralized, sir," she reported to Admiral Choi. "No human casualties. The Council fleet has been completely defeated." Choi nodded, but there was no joy in his victory. Too many innocent people had died at Haven's Rest for this to feel like celebration. This was simply the first payment on Sao, a debt that the Council had foolishly believed they would never have to settle. "Signal the surviving Council ships," he ordered. "Tell them that this is what happens when you mistake human compassion for weakness, and remind them that we've only just begun to show them what their mercy has cost them." The command bridge of the inevitable was a twisted wreck of melted metal and sparking electronics. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across surfaces that had once gleamed with the pride of Council engineering. Vortesh knelt among the debris, his once magnificent exoskeleton cracked and bleeding blue ichor onto the deck plates. His mandibles, symbols of his authority for over 2 centuries, hung broken and useless from his alien face. Around him, the remnants of his bridge crew lay unconscious, their bodies carefully stunned rather than killed by human weapons that had rewritten everything. The Council thought they knew about warfare. Through the fractured viewports, Vortesh could see the impossible sight of human vessels moving among the wreckage of his fleet, not to claim trophies or execute prisoners, but to rescue survivors from ships that should have been their enemies. "Admiral." Choi stepped carefully through the ruined command center, his boots crunching on crystalline debris from shattered control panels. He wore the simple uniform of Earth's Space Force, unmarked by the elaborate decorations that Council officers used to display their rank and achievements. Behind him followed Captain Nam and a small security detail, their weapons lowered but ready, their faces reflecting the grim satisfaction of a job completed. "Council Leader Vortesh." Choi's voice carried no triumph, only the cold finality of judgment rendered. Your war is over. Vortesh raised his compound eyes to meet the human's gaze, seeing in them the same icy determination that had characterized every human action since Haven's Rest. This wasn't the terrified species the Council had expected to crush. This was something far more dangerous, a people who had been pushed past their breaking point and found strength they never knew they possessed. Kill me then, Vortesh clicked weakly through his damaged translator. End this quickly. No, Choi replied, his voice carrying undertones that made even the battle-hardened alien flinch. Death would be too easy. You're going to live with what you've done, and you're going to watch as we undo everything your council built through fear and intimidation. Through the viewport, Vortesh could see human medical ships approaching disabled council vessels, their hulls marked with the Red Cross symbol that meant healing rather than harm. Rescue teams in powered armor were cutting through damaged hulls to reach trapped alien crews, working with the same efficiency they had shown in combat, but now directed towards saving lives rather than taking them. Your civilizations are intact, Choi continued, his words echoing through the ruined bridge. Your people live. Your worlds remain yours. But your ability to wage war against innocence is ended forever. The truth of those words was already becoming visible throughout the galaxy. Human ships equipped with the same quantum technology that had devastated the Council fleet were now appearing in orbit around every Council world, not as conquerors, but as peacekeepers. They disabled military installations with surgical precision, leaving civilian infrastructure untouched. They neutralized weapons platforms while simultaneously delivering medical supplies to populations that had suffered under Council rule. Oni. Mortak Prime, Councillor Gricketh watched from his palace as human transport ships unloaded tons of food and medicine in the capital's main plaza. His people, the same insectoid warriors who had served the Council for millennia, cautiously approached the human aid workers who distributed supplies without asking for payment or allegiance. For the first time in their recorded history, the Mortaki were receiving help from outsiders rather than taking it by force. Why? Vortesh whispered, his broken voice barely audible above the hum of life support systems. Why show mercy to those who showed you none? Choi was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant as he remembered his daughter's laughter, his grandchildren's faces, the wedding ring that had melted in the fires of Haven's Rest. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of a species that had learned the difference between strength and cruelty. Because we never wanted to rule anyone. We never wanted to conquer worlds or build empires. We just wanted you to understand that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons, or our ships, or our technology. It's that we remember every act of kindness, and we never forget when someone hurts our family. The rescue operations continued for days, with human ships working tirelessly to save the crews of vessels they had just defeated in battle. Advanced medical technology that the Council had never imagined was used to heal alien soldiers who had come to destroy Earth. Human engineers repaired damaged life support systems on enemy ships, ensuring that prisoners of war received the same care as their own wounded. President Jiwoo Park's final transmission was broadcast from Earth to every inhabited world in known space, carried by communication networks that humans had quietly infiltrated during their shadow war against the Council. Her voice reached billions of beings across hundreds of worlds, delivering a message that would reshape galactic civilization. Citizens of the galaxy, she began, standing in the same command center where humanity had planned their desperate defense just weeks earlier. The age of the Council's tyranny is over. For too long, 12 species have ruled over hundreds through fear and intimidation. They claimed to bring order, but they brought only oppression. They spoke of peace while threatening those who dared to seek freedom. Behind her, holographic displays showed human ships distributing aid throughout Council space, former enemies working together to rebuild what had been damaged in the brief but decisive war. Today begins a new era, an era where strength serves, peace not the other way around, where differences are celebrated rather than crushed, where no species, no matter how small or seemingly weak, lives in fear of those who claim authority over them. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On worlds that had suffered under Council rule for centuries, populations rose up not in violence but in celebration. The Kepler colonies, whose crystalline inhabitants had been forced to provide raw materials for Council ships, declared their independence and requested membership in the new galactic community. The Vegan agricultural worlds, whose people had been little more than slaves feeding Council armies, began planning their own governments for the first time in living memory. 6 months later, the first Galactic Assembly convened on Haven Station, built in the same system where the mining colony had been destroyed. The new facility was a marvel of cooperative engineering, with sections designed by and for every species that chose to participate. Unlike the Council's crystalline chamber that had been designed to intimidate, this assembly hall welcomed all, beings as equals. Representatives from over 300 worlds gathered to establish new laws based on cooperation rather than domination. The former Council species sat alongside the people they had once ruled, learning to function as participants rather than masters. Humanity, despite having the most advanced military in the galaxy, took only observer status, insisting that the new government must be built by all species working together. Admiral Choi stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, watching through the transparent aluminum windows as delegates from across the galaxy worked to build something better than what had come before. Beside him, a simple memorial plaque bore the names of all 50,000 people who had died at Haven's Rest, including his daughter Su Jin, her husband Jin Woo, and their children. The new assembly voted today, Captain Nam reported, approaching, with a data tablet containing the day's proceedings. Universal healthcare, educational exchange programs, and joint scientific research initiatives. The Zephyrians are already sharing their crystal-growing technology, and the Mortaki want to establish cultural exchange programs. Choi nodded, his weathered face showing satisfaction rather than triumph. And the former Council leadership, Vortesh, and the others are serving as advisors to the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. They're helping identify other species that were oppressed by Council rule, so we can invite them to join the assembly. Good. Choi placed his hand on the memorial plaque, feeling the warmth of the metal that had been forged from recovered materials. From Haven's Rest. Sujin always said that the best way to honor the dead was to build something better for the living. He turned away from the memorial, ready to begin the next chapter of his life. Behind him, the plaque caught the light from the system's star, its inscription visible to anyone who cared to read it, in memory of those who died so that others might live free. Their sacrifice will never be forgotten, and their dream of peace among the stars will never die. As Admiral Choi walked toward the transport that would take him back to Earth and the retirement he had earned, he whispered words that only the memorial could hear. Rest easy, Su-Jin. No one will ever again mistake human compassion for weakness, and no one will ever again threaten our family without learning the price of that mistake. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their ability to respond to hatred with justice, to answer cruelty with mercy, and to build something better from the ashes of what had been destroyed. The Council had sought to contain humanity through fear, but instead had unleashed something far more dangerous, a species that refused to become the monsters their enemies expected them to be. The end.